Like you mentioned, my name is Dr. Habib Gajam. I am the Executive Secretary for Zamfara Information Technology Development Agency. Basically, it's a state government agency that is charged with the responsibility of promoting ICT development, innovation, as well as the overall digital economy in Zamfara State. First and foremost, we live in the digital age where technology has basically taken over every aspect of our lives. And more importantly, in government, if you want to run a very efficient public administration, you have to key into the various aspects of technology that makes governance seamless and makes the business of running government itself very easy. Now, the mandate of ZITDA, the Zamfara Information Technology Development Agency, is to, one, ensure that there is an expansion, continuous expansion of communications and digital infrastructure in Zamfara State, upon which any other, digital transformation initiative thrives. Secondly, the promotion of electronic governance. And then thirdly, the promotion of digital skills and literacy first to our students in our schools, both primary and secondary, and of course, institutions of higher learning, the state civil service, both at local government and at state level, and then also the wider society in terms of entrepreneurs, businesses, petty traders, and all other kinds of segments of the society. Because digital transformation is an all-encompassing journey. You cannot move, you have to carry on every sector, that is very important and critical to the success of the public service. So basically, this is the role of ZITDA. So the question you asked around what impact we have made in the last 1 year. First and foremost, when we assumed office, it's a relatively new agency that was established, I think, 3-4 years ago. And by the time we assumed responsibility of this agency, there was basically very little work that had been done in terms of all of these things that I had mentioned to you earlier. So the first things we did was to ensure that we have, guiding documents that will guide both the operation and the actualization of the vision of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Zamfara State, Dr. Dauda Lawal. And by doing so, we developed an ICT policy for the state, which didn't exist prior to our assumption. We also developed a digital strategy. We have just drafted our Zamfara digital literacy framework, focusing on the initial, points that I raised earlier in terms of ensuring all students at all levels of education are digitally literate before they graduate, and to equip our civil servants both at state and local government levels with some form of digital skills and literacy to effectively manage the state's digital economy. And of course, the wider society. The vision is to ensure that businesses, entrepreneurs are equipped with the right set of digital skills that will help them gain visibility in their businesses, upscale their businesses, and a whole lot more. So these documents are the foundation of everything that we do. Everything that we do is being built upon, some of the provisions of those documents, those policies and frameworks. After that, excuse me, we have also partnerships and collaboration are important if you want to really make an impact. The technology space is an ecosystem, so you need to leverage on a lot of partnerships and collaborations for you to be able to realize the objectives that you set out to achieve. And by collaboration, I mean collaborating with both the private sector, as well as the federal government, relevant federal government agencies, just like the Federal Ministry of Communications, the Nigerian Communications Commission, the National Information Technology Development Agency, the Galaxy Backbone, as well as the Nigerian Communication Satellite. So these are some of the collaborations where partnering with each of these institutions on specific projects that will ensure that we impact the digital economy sector in the state. Recorded quite a lot in terms of the three critical pillars that I had highlighted earlier. In terms of communications and digital infrastructure, first, what we did to encourage investment in fiber and connectivity is to ensure that we waive off right-of-way charges for telecom companies that are willing to do business in Zamfara State. And through this very bold initiative, the Universal Services Provisions Fund of the NCC is providing an incentive to lay fiber across some of our critical public institutions. We had already taken that initiative. We are connecting several critical public institutions like the Government House, the State Secretariat, the State Assembly, the State High Court, the Specialist Hospital, the School of Nursing, the Office for Internal Revenue, as well as a GSM village. Now, this is just the first phase covering about 10 kilometers. The overall coverage is about 30 kilometers. And very soon we are deploying the 20 kilometers as soon as we are almost 90% done for the 10 kilometers. The aim or the vision is to ensure that every government office within the state capital is connected with reliable high-speed internet connectivity. That is key to unlocking the second pillar, which is electronic governance. Without a reliable internet infrastructure, you wouldn't be able to deploy, all the platforms that you aim to utilize in order to make, public service delivery seamless. Now, on the e-governance front, we have also just deployed a flagship electronic governance platform, which we call Zamfara eGov Connect. And what that platform does is to ensure that we try as much as possible to reduce the use of papers and files in government work. And that leads to transparency and accountability in the way and manner, and even, security of sensitive government documents. We are at the pilot phase. We are piloting with the State Executive Council, comprising of commissioners, special advisors, the secretary to the state government, who is the coordinating secretariat for the State Executive Council. So after that, we will also scale up and take it further to other relevant MDAs. And that on that platform, we have several features like video conferencing features, which makes Executive Council meetings virtual. People can meet, it doesn't have to be physical. People can actually, meet virtually from wherever they are. Secondly, it also has document management system because it's an AI-driven platform, which means it makes the work of government very easy in terms of government repository, in terms of queries and all of that. It also has calendar modules managing schedules for government appointees in terms of scheduling meetings and activities and all of that. There is an AI featured module that we call Insight IQ, which provides guide. For example, if a memo is sent to the governor about a technical memo, actually engineering, finance, or law, or whatever it is, that Insight IQ feature provides some perspective to the governor, like a summary of that document, so that he has a holistic picture of all the technical jargons that are in that document. So there's a whole lot that we are doing in terms of deployment of electronic governance. And that is something that we have deployed using the local area network. It's not something that is on the internet or on the cloud because of the security, like I said, and the sensitive nature of government documents. So we localized it. Thirdly, which is also very important, is the promotion of digital skills and digital literacy. At the moment, we are collaborating with the Nigerian Communications Commission to provide training, 4G and 5G training, to 30 graduates of telecommunications engineering, electrical, electronics engineering, computer science, information technology graduates, to train in 4G and 5G network. And this is in collaboration with the NCC through their own partners, Nokia. Again, we are also empowering 100 women in Zamfara State with various, ICT skills that will ensure that they are independent. After those trainings, they will be provided with devices so that they can effectively, engage in various aspects of, digital platforms and actually earn a living. And this is a collaboration that we are working harmoniously with the Office of the First Lady of the state, being the champion of, women empowerment in the state. So these are some of the, giant and bold initiatives that we have taken to ensure that we move along with times and current trends that are happening, all around the world in terms of digital transformation. Yes, you're absolutely right. Zamfara is one of the very few states across the country that have waived off right-of-way charges for telecom companies to 0 naira. It used to be, in the previous years, it used to be around 3,000, 4,000 per linear meter, and then His Excellency brought it down to 145 naira per linear meter sometime in 2023. And then early last year, we also took that decision to make it to 0. Now, the federal government, through the Nigerian Communications Commission, has been an advocate, a strong advocate of, waiver of right-of-way charges, including, the World Bank, so that, it provides that platform for ease of doing business within the technology and telecom sector. So we recognize that Zamfara is in the north. If you look at the available data and information, all the main cables, fiber cables that are in Nigeria, came through the southern part of the country, especially Lagos. The four main connections that we have that have come across Europe and America, the termination point is Lagos, which means the cost of data is relatively cheaper. The cost of broadband, rather, is relatively cheaper and affordable in Lagos than in the northern part of the country. And this is as a result of the dearth of infrastructure that we have. So we have to make bold decisions that encourage fiber companies, telecoms companies to come and do business in Zamfara State. Without infrastructure, you cannot really do much in terms of expanding the digital economy sector, which holds a lot of promises. It's a multi-million-dollar industry. So there's a lot of opportunities to be unlocked. So if we concede, just a fraction of some of the revenues that we make from telecom companies that lay fiber in Zamfara State, I think it's a good concession. because of the long-term impact that it has. Agriculture is the mainstay of over 80 to 90% of farmers, of residents and citizens of Zamfara State. And any serious government that's determined to um, improve this very important and critical sector, then technology is one of the best ways to go there, and very fast. Now, what we are trying to do in this sector is to ensure that first, we have a comprehensive database of all the farmers that we have in Zamfara State, identifying them by their biodata, their individual details, the lands that they own, the farmlands that they have, the sizes of those lands, the kind of crops they harvest, the kind of fertilizers they use, the kind of farm inputs and farm implements, they require in order to have a great yield. This is the first, because data is critical and it's important. Any government-led intervention that is not adequately backed by reliable data, then that intervention may not really make the desired impact. Now, that is the first step. The second step is to deploy technology through our proposed data centers across 3 senatorial districts that will serve the various senatorial zones. We will be providing agricultural extension services to farmers, providing guide on the best type of fertilizer to use, the best time to, plant their seeds, the right kind of seeds they need to use, the type of whether it's going to, there's, extensive weather forecasts in terms of drought and flooding, which will provide farmers, the right information beforehand, which will help them in making sure that they safeguard their crops. And we are doing that using various technologies, Internet of Things sensors that can transmit data from those farmlands to the data centers. So this is a costly venture and a long-term project. And quite recently, we had an engagement with the Nigerian Agricultural Development Fund, and we are discussing the best ways we can assess some interventions in that respect. And we are doing everything possible to ensure that we realize this vision. And like I mentioned, the first thing to do is to have that comprehensive database. I think that will make, because most of the government-led interventions that have been happening in the past, you realize that government will provide fertilizers, they will provide farm inputs and farm implements, but they end up, in the market. People sell them or in the hands of politicians. So they don't really get to the, deserving beneficiaries, people who actually need them. And again, if you have a database, you can actually provide tailored-made support to these farmers, because a rice farmer may not necessarily require the type of intervention that you would typically give to a maize farmer or a millet farmer and what have you. So we are very deliberate about this. It may take time, like I mentioned, we are building from the scratch, but we have a vision that is quite uh, unique, and we believe that we will get there with all the support that we have from the state governor. A typical example would be when His Excellency, the Executive Governor, became the governor of Zamfara State. He came with six-point agenda, or a mantra, if you like, to rescue the state in 6 critical sectors, which is security. Zamfara has been in the news, for a while, for negative reasons. Secondly, agriculture. Thirdly, healthcare, education, empowerment, and overall economic development. Now, the policy that we drafted basically focused on supporting these critical sectors with digital transformation. If you take security, for example, a lot of effort have been put in place to ensure that our people are secured. We still have a lot of challenges, particularly in semi-urban and rural areas. But the effort of the state government is yielding the results in collaboration with the federal government and federal military and paramilitary institutions. Now, the government has always been an advocate of using technology to combat this insecurity. And that's the reason why we are building a command and control center in the government house that monitors security situations across the state. We have held a meeting with the NCC on the prospects of partnership to leverage the toll line, the 112 infrastructure, which is part of the critical national infrastructure, so that calls that are routed, through that call center can be rerouted to the command and control center for effective management of security situations across the state. And this provides you with real-time visibility of the hotspots and then the data to mobilize the required resources in those places. So that's digital transformation. That is technology for you supporting security. Secondly, the agriculture that I had just mentioned, what technology, the prospects of using technology in that particular space. And then thirdly, healthcare. We are actually currently we are deploying an electronic health information management system, which is popularly known as the EHR, electronic health records. What that aims to do is all the renovated medical facilities in the state, because the governor declared a state of emergency in the healthcare sector. And what we are doing to support that initiative is to ensure that all remodeled and equipped hospitals in the state have these platforms, the comprehensive health information management system, that not only manage patient record and effective administration of medical care, it also helps to plug revenue leakage. The government wants to monitor every revenue that it makes from medical laboratory tests, from theaters, from emergencies, from drugs, from all of these things. And that will ultimately also provide the government, because of the data that we'll get, it will provide the government in adequate planning and budgeting, in subsequent, budget years and policy plannings. So this is ongoing as we speak. If you take education, for example, we have a comprehensive education management system resident with the State Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. We have just engaged FlexiServe, which is an edutech company, to monitor the remittances of all higher institutions of learning in the state, to make sure that there is a blockage on every leakage that we have in our revenue stream. Economic empowerment, we have just digitized the state social register, which has about 70% accuracy in compliance with some of the requirements and guidelines provided by the World Bank and other international partners. Now, digitizing this social register means that donor agencies and funding bodies can actually have access to that register to see whatever interventions that they provide, whether to vulnerable people in the society whether to small businesses and things like that. So, I mean, we are using technology, wherever we can to make life easy, to make governance easy, and overall to make sure that government services, administered in the most efficient and transparent manner. We are charging 0 naira per linear meter, and one of the driving, forces of this very bold decision is the fact that the federal government has consistently encouraged and lobbied state governments to remove right of way charges so that, you know, the phase of digital transformation is achieved, uniformly across all states. Recently, we had, an engagement in Lagos, the National Broadband Alliance for Nigeria, NBAN, and that is an ambitious plan of the Federal Ministry of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy to lay about 90,000 kilometers of fiber across the country. Now, I believe that when the time comes for the execution of that project, some of these policies that we have initiated will be very helpful in us having seamless, access and intervention in these areas. Because a state that eliminates right of way charges to 0 naira is naturally going to be considered in such kind of policies and programs, uh, ahead of states that charge, an amount per linear meter. So if out of 90,000 kilometers of fiber, even if we access 5,000 or 10,000 kilometers out of that on account of elimination of zero right of way charges, I think that's very, that's a win for us as a state. And that means that we are unlocking a lot of, potential, in this very critical and important sector. Yeah. So you are right. Most of the places that you lack adequate internet access are in the rural areas, and it's not just internet access. Access to communication services, like MTN, Airtel, and others. That is equally important because if you have access to communication services, and on top of that you have internet access in rural areas, that it means even your financial inclusion, you are including people financially into the financial system. Secondly, for government, I think it will also bring more people into the tax net if people have access to internet services, that they can access value added services as well. So that means the state will also make revenues. Now, the fact that we have this very bold vision does not mean that it's not challenging. At the moment, the most important uh, issue that we are dealing with is to ensure that the state capital in Gusau, there is adequate access of communications infrastructure and reliable broadband connectivity. And the plan is to expand to other urban cities and semi-urban cities, and then you take it down. You cannot roll out everything all at once. You have to do it in phases because of the costly nature, because of other challenges. Like I mentioned, collaboration is important. These things, the state government cannot actually do them alone. We have to collaborate with the private sector. We have to collaborate with the telecom companies, service providers, and most importantly, the federal government and relevant federal institutions to ensure that these things are, rolled out even in the most remotest, areas in the state. But for now, the focus is on the state capital. You may be aware that there is a lot of ongoing work, urban renewal project, where a lot of, which has a lot of segments. There's a road segment, construction segment, schools, hospitals, and all of that. And we are doing that to ensure that we have a befitting capital city that, can compete with other major cities in Nigeria. At the moment, we actually engage a metropolitan fiber company that is operating in Lagos. They are in Zamfara, and we are working with them to lay the 10-kilometer fiber network that I had mentioned to you earlier. So that is the purpose of collaboration and partnership. And if we continue, looking back a couple of years ago, we wouldn't be having this interview with you because there's basically nothing to say about, the digital transformation space in Zamfara State. But in the last 2 years, we have made giant strides in this area. And I think I can proudly say that we are now actually beginning to compete with some of our peers in the southern part of the country. Within the next coming days and weeks, perhaps before the end of this month, we are convening a stakeholder engagement for the draft Zamfara Digital Literacy Framework. And that framework, encompasses all of the things that I mentioned earlier in terms of, digital skills and literacy for our students, for our civil servants, and for the wider society. The reason why we are doing that is to make sure that we achieve maximum impact in terms of implementation. That is why we are inviting relevant federal government agencies as partners in progress. For example, where you don't have, fiber connectivity in remote areas, you can actually leverage Nigerian communication satellite to provide satellite connectivity in our schools, in our rural communities. That is the power of partnership. Where you have, especially in urban and semi-urban centers, where you have the presence of Galaxy backbone, we can easily key into, their network to provide internet services to schools within the cities and semi-urban areas. The collaboration with NIDDA has a national digital literacy framework, and we believe NIDDA can support us in terms of implementation, in terms of technical support, in terms of, certain interventions that we would otherwise find, difficult to do by ourselves. Again, NCC is given. Like I mentioned to you, we are also collaborating with them to provide digital literacy and digital skills. So the point, and including the private sector, there is a lot of interest from private sector technology companies to also play their own part, whether they are service providers, whether they are consultants, because it's an all-encompassing document, and it's a vision that we aim to, by 2030, achieve about 70% digital literacy for the citizens of Zamfara State. So the governor is going to flag off that engagement, and any deliberations and discussions that, arise from that particular engagement will be put, into a proper context and see how best implementation strategy can be adopted. So that is just one critical aspect. Now, in terms of the impact that you were talking about, at the moment, we are trying to um, establish an Institute of Information Technology in the state. And the reason why we want to do this is because we want Zamfara State to be the next ICT hub of Northern Nigeria. And we want to do that through ICT education. We'll be providing training in various aspects of technology like computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, database management, data science, business analytics, games development or games technology rather, and blockchain technology, Internet of Things. You will hide programs that you will hardly find in any institution of learning, especially monotechnics and polytechnics uh, in northern Nigeria, and by extension, even in the southern part of the country. So what we are trying to do is to have that long-term vision of making Zamfara attractive to people and students and parents who want to advance, their children's education in the area of ICT. ICT projects are quite costly, and one of the best things that is going for us is the fact that we have a principal who understands the unequivocal, and undisputable role of ICT in service delivery. You have a governor who was in the private sector, who was in the bank. The private sector leverages technology way better than the public sector. The public sector is still catching up. So he actually brought that private sector mentality into public service. And that's the reason why for him to achieve, some of the vision that he has set for the state, he gave priority to development of the ICT sector. Now, in terms of funding, yes, you are right. There's a lot of resource constraint because we have ambitious programs and plans that we want to pursue. But due to funding opportunities, due to funding problems, we tend to scale down a little bit. So we are leveraging partnerships and collaborations wherever we can, whether it's financial, whether it's technical, and otherwise. The point is you cannot move in isolation. You have to leverage the resources of your partners, the technical competencies of your partners, the technologies of your partners, service provision, from your partners. It's a bouquet of a lot of partnerships that we have to leverage on if we really need to make the desired impact. In the next 12 months, we have a vision of making sure that the temporary site of our Institute of Information Technology has taken off with some of these programs, getting started. We have gone very far. His Excellency has graciously approved, a temporary site for the takeoff, for the immediate takeoff of that institute. And he's providing us with all the support that we need to ensure that we don't waste a minute in making sure that we take off immediately. That is before the, coming on board or the construction of the permanent site. Secondly, we are trying to tidy up because we have a program, we have a vision that is both short, medium, and long term. So far, we have achieved most of our short and medium term goals. So the long term goals, like I mentioned, the classic example of the Institute of Information Technology, is the one that we are mostly focused on. We want to educate our young population in various aspects of technology. We want to make Zamfara the next ICT hub of Northern Nigeria. And if we are to be there in the next 5 and 10 years, then the work has to start today. And that is what we are doing.